Welcome to SponsorGate 2019. Hey Fragrance family, I'm David, I'm a fragrance bro, of course your best source for everything fragrance related. Today I have a video that's kind of in the style of my basic series, but today we're going to be talking about sponsorships and what that means. So let me pose a question to you. Did you know that there are three people on Instagram that are totally against any kind of sponsorships within the fragrance community? No? Well, see you later. Thanks for commenting, liking, and subscribing. I'm just kidding. But there really is a small community recently, a very vocal community, and I would say a really toxic community that is against any kind of sponsorships of any kind within the fragrance community. I wanted to talk about that today. I want to talk about my experience with sponsorships and what I believe the ethical ramifications of that is, my responsibility to disclose sponsors, and I think the overall scope of what sponsorships means within the fragrance community. Now, did you know there are many fragrance companies and creators and perfumers who watch my channel? They watch my channel and they see what I have to say about certain things, especially things that are kind of a hot button. They really pay attention. They email me a lot of times and they tell me their thoughts. And I want to say that because I have people within the community that watch me that maybe some of them have sponsored content on the channel, and I want to defend them. And also I want to tell them to not be afraid of this really toxic anti-sponsorship movement that's coming around. So what is sponsorship and why does it happen? Well, first let's start with why it happens. The reason why sponsorship happens to start with is that there are three groups of people. There is the fragrance company, there is the fragrance reviewer or influencer, we'll just call them influencer, and then there's the audience. All three of those people have different goals in mind. So let's start with the audience. The audience, of course, they want some type of content, and most of the time they want it for free. So they look to an influencer or reviewer, or however you want to describe them, to see what they have to say about a certain fragrance. So the goal of the audience is to get an honest, hopefully, opinion of a fragrance so they can get a genuine suggestion to help them out in their daily life. They also too want to be entertained naturally, so I think that's why there are a couple different styles of reviewers, some that are informational and some that are entertainment, and you have a mixture of those within the community. So then you have the reviewer, or let's just say the influencer. Now if I were to ask what is a very pithy way to describe a person who has a presence on YouTube. Maybe they have a few different social media accounts that they manage. Maybe they have an audience of people that follows them. What do you call that type of person? In a very pithy way, you would call them an influencer. Now, for whatever reason, that has come across very negative and has a very negative connotation within the community. And I think that the reason is because there is a good type of influencer and then there is a bad type of influencer, and we'll get to that later. But in short, an influencer is just someone who has a level of influence and they have an audience of people that follows them for whatever reason. So am I an influencer? I guess by definition, yes, I am. I don't consider myself someone who is that type of brand of personality-driven type of content creator, but I am an influencer because I do have an audience, you guys, that watch my channel and they want to see what I have to say. For that, of course, I'm very thankful, so thank you for watching. The goal of the influencer is to create content. They want to ultimately get paid for what they do, whether it be through YouTube or be through sponsorships of some kind. Essentially what they want to do is they want to grow. They want to grow their influence as a way to be successful. And of course, what's wrong with that? That's just another way that someone could build a business around something that they love or something that they want to do. I think that's admirable if anyone tries to build a business around something that helps some other person. So the goal of the audience is to watch content. The goal of the influencer or the content creator is to create the content that the audience will watch. But what is the goal of the company? Their goal is to get as many eyeballs from that audience onto their brand in whatever way they can, and hopefully, within the course of time, sell some of their products to that audience. So the goal, ultimately, of these companies is sales. We all know that, of course. They want to sell stuff. So the reason why sponsored content happens in the first place is that this connection is ultimately beneficial for all three parties. Because if a company can sponsor content for the content creator can then in turn make content for the audience. And in that scenario, every party wins. So what is sponsored content? Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because people are trying to move the goalpost a little bit on what sponsored content is. Ultimately, sponsored content is paid content. That is all it is. If a company is paying me to make content on my channel, That is sponsored content. Now, there are good and there are bad sponsorships, in my opinion. A good sponsorship would be like my basic series, which is typically not related to the actual content that I'm doing. So in essence, it's like a commercial within the content itself. And the reason I describe this as a good sponsorship is that the advertiser doesn't color my opinion of what the content will be, because it has nothing to do with the actual sponsor themselves. A bad sponsorship, in my opinion, would be something like, so for instance, if I were to review Spice Blend by Dior, and I would say, this is sponsored by Dior, what would the audience think in that situation? They would just think, oh, he's just paid to tell me whatever Dior wants to say about this. So in that case, I think that is a bad sponsorship. Now on my channel, I've done good and bad sponsorships. I've done some that are completely not related to the actual content, and I've done some that are more closely connected to the content. Even though I'm honest with my opinions about the product, I still don't like to do that because I don't like the way that they come across to the audience. So we obviously know that money is sponsored content. Okay. What about bottles? So one of the questions that comes up sometimes is whether or not giving a bottle for review is equivalent to advertising or sponsorship. And the answer is unequivocally no. Part of the reason is because if you have a sponsorship deal, you're under a contractual arrangement here. If someone gives you a bottle for review, there is no contractual arrangement. There is no expectation. Companies will send out review bottles with the hopes that a content creator will make an honest video describing the fragrance for their audience and hopefully recommending that for their audience. This is also very standard within different industries. PR agencies understand that a content creator, a writer, a journalist, whoever, they may not actually recommend that. They may actually not like the product that they're sending out. And then the content creator has their own discretion about what they want to do with that. They don't have to particularly say anything. They don't have any talking points that they have to adhere to. They just have to describe things that they think they want their audience to see and that their audience might like. They don't even have to review it at all. If they're doing a review, then it's really just art criticism. They're just critiquing the fragrance from a subjective point of view, describing the art to their audience. But that's not the same as advertising. Advertising has very specific and narrow guidelines. You have to say this about our company. You have to lead them to this web address. You have to do this, do this, do this. Whereas giving a bottle, there's very little that the company has that they can leverage on the actual content creator themselves, other than we hope that you like it. That's why a lot of these companies, they don't sponsor any content. For them, it's way cheaper to give a bottle to someone and for them to have an honest reaction with it and honestly describe it to their audience. So as a content creator, it really behooves me to get some free bottles so I can make content that I would not otherwise make. So that in turn, of course, helps my audience, because then I can make a review or some kind of content for my audience about a product that may be just coming out that I might not be able to in any other situation other than receiving a bottle for review. And that's not even to mention the financial aspect of it, which if you want to review something on YouTube, you need to either find a sample of it or buy a bottle of it. And if you're constantly buying bottles of it just to review something on YouTube, then that can become a debt trap fast. Now, my perspective on this is that as a content creator, I do reserve the right not to review certain products that are sent to me that I just don't like or I can't recommend to my audience. I've done that several times. Though it's not common with me, it does happen. All right, so what about samples? What do I think about samples? As a content creator, if a company sends me samples for review, that is essentially saying you get to this whenever you want. So if a company does a sponsorship, that gets to the top of the queue because we already have an agreement where it's contractual, okay? If a company sends me a bottle, then I want to get to that next. But if a company sends me a sample, I can't really do much with them as a content creator unless I just really like something that I smell. So I see that kind of as the very bottom tier, that if I get some samples for review, maybe I'll get to it eventually, but no promises. So then that brings me to my next point, and that is, what is the ethical ramifications for sponsored content with the creator? The FTC is a regulating government body within the United States, and they specifically say that if you have anything that you are sponsoring, you must disclose it to your audience. If you are receiving something for free, you must disclose it to your audience. And I believe that the audience's expectations in all of this is transparency. That is what they really want. They want transparency and they want honesty. In my case, what I always try to do, I always try to be transparent about what I receive, if I'm sponsored, and I delineate those. And even if I receive something for review, I always still want to maintain 100% honesty with my audience if I think it's good or bad. And I think that's genuinely what a lot of people within the fragrance community are doing. Now, whether there are some hucksters out there who are not doing that, I don't know. I can't speak for them. So I always reserve the right to, one, not review something that's sent to me for review, and two, always be honest. And I think that aligns with the audience's expectations too. Okay, so we covered the why this thing happens, because all three groups here have a goal in mind. The audience wants content, the content creator wants to make content for their audience and hopefully get paid and be successful and grow. And then the company themselves, they want sales. So they want to get their products or maybe their name or their company out in front of that audience somehow. So they go through a middleman, which is the content creator. And we also covered the exchanges here given from the company, whether it be sponsored content, which is paid promotional content for commercial advertising on that content creator's video or whatever they're doing, whether it be free bottles or whether it be samples. All of this should be disclosed, of course, to the audience, so that way all three channels have some transparency and what the dealings are here. So now that we have that big elephant out of the way, let me talk about this anti-sponsorship thing going on. I think this whole thing is just completely absurd. One of the reasons it's absurd is because it's coming from some people who have a very small audience to start with. And I don't mean to disparage them. I don't mean to make fun of them at all. But the reason that I say that is because it's really easy for someone with a very small audience who cannot get any type of sponsored content or free bottles to start with. It's really easy for them to mock or even disparage people who are doing something on a higher level. Now, by all means, I think that there needs to be some accountability here. Part of the thing that they're talking about is that there are some content creators who are not disclosing that they're getting free stuff or that they're being sponsored at all. If there are any content creators out there who are receiving something for free and they're not disclosing that they were sent something for free from that company, they need to. Because for one, it's against the law. Okay, it's just against the law. But two, of course, is that you need transparency. There needs to be some type of transparency and ethical values here between the content creator and the audience themselves. However, I don't think that the argument against anti-sponsored content is coming from a place of just accountability. I think that it's also coming from a place of that it shouldn't exist. And this is where the argument totally shuts down, because this will never go away. But these 3 or 4 anti-sponsored people, they're ultimately against sponsored content altogether, not against valid sponsored content. In a lot of ways, it's another form of cancel culture that's just trying to cancel a content creator or cancel a company who is participating in this type of practice that they think is bad. Ultimately, I think where it comes down to is that there is some form of jealousy within some people here within the anti-sponsored movement. Maybe not all of them, but I definitely think there's a form of jealousy because the current arrangement helps everyone. It helps all 3 parties get exactly what they want. If someone wants to disrupt that altogether, the only thing I can think of is that they just don't want anyone to get anything for free. Because if a reviewer is honest and they're transparent about their sponsor, if they're honest and transparent to the audience about maybe receiving a product for review, where's the problem? There shouldn't be any problem. But if you're someone with 100 followers looking at someone with 50,000 followers saying they get all this free stuff, well, yeah, companies want to follow an audience. They want to follow the biggest audience they can. If you define only good content as content coming from a place where you bought bottles, then only the rich can be successful to start with. It just brings about elitism. Because if you can't afford bottles, then you can't review. If you're not rich enough to be able to review, then you can't review. That is their elitism in a nutshell. That person has no idea what it takes to have sponsored content to do what they love, that they can share the joys of certain fragrances with their audience. And if they can make money doing what they love, and they can do it honestly and ethically and transparently, that's a win-win for everybody. So that is what I think about sponsorship and this whole stupid SponsorGate thing. It's gonna go away, guys. Don't worry about it. If you're a company out there and you're maybe a little bit flustered about this, don't. It's not even worth your time. Like I said, it's like 3 or 4 people. Don't worry about them. If you're a content creator out there, just please be honest about everything. Be transparent about everything. Reveal everything to your audience. That is all your audience wants. And if you're an audience member out there, keep on trucking. Thank you for always watching and commenting and subscribing. I'll always make content for you that is honest and transparent. That is my pledge to you. So thank you for watching. This video is sponsored by, no, I'm kidding. Thanks again for watching, guys. What do you think about this whole thing? Let me know in the comments down below, of course. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. I love you for it. I'll see you next time. I'm Dave at the Fragrance Bros. Bye.